I didn't expect my life to fit into a cardboard box, but there I was, standing on the driveway while my mother's hands moved faster than my thoughts. She wasn't calm. She wasn't gentle. She just ripped through my closet like a storm, tearing leaves from trees, tossing my shirts, books, and notebooks into a battered plastic bin as if they were nothing more than yesterday's garbage. "You're an adult," she said, voice sharp, clipped. "You don't belong here anymore. Your sister-in-law needs this room." I blinked, gripping the handles of my suitcase so tightly my knuckles went white. My stomach twisted. Every morning for the past 6 years, I had gotten up at dawn to help run the diner, to manage the online orders, to reply to every email and comment before most of the world had even started scrolling on their phones. I had built the online presence, the customer base, the little emergency fund they now claimed was theirs. And yet, in a single sentence, I was invisible. Behind her, my brother's wife was already examining the room, leaning against the windowsill with that smug expression of entitlement, as if she had been waiting her entire life to claim a space that had nothing to do with her. My brother walked past me carrying a box of miscellaneous junk, muttering, "You're overreacting," when I flinched and barely caught my laptop before it hit the driveway. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I didn't even cry, at least, not there. I just lifted what was left of my life from the floor, dropped the rest in the trash bin, and walked away. Every step echoed in my chest like a drumbeat of betrayal. By the time the Uber arrived, my hands were numb, my stomach was hollow, and my mind was buzzing with disbelief. I sat in the back seat staring out the window, watching the only home I had ever known shrink behind me, until the tears finally came. Not in front of them. Not while they could see. Alone, in motion, I let myself feel the weight of all the years I had spent being indispensable but unvalued. My friend Sam answered the door of their cramped apartment like it was the most natural thing in the world, arms open, a half-eaten sandwich in hand. "You take my bed," they said, shrugging as if the couch were perfectly fine for them. "We'll sort everything else tomorrow." The next morning, I opened my laptop for the first time in weeks without them breathing over my shoulder. Every account, every email, every delivery app login I had set up for the diner flashed on my screen. The thought came unbidden, all of this existed because of me. My mom, my brother, and their precious sister-in-law had relied entirely on my work, yet they had no idea how it functioned, or how fragile it really was. I made a list. Everything I had built, everything I had managed. Social media pages, supplier accounts, analytics reports, email campaigns, they all belonged to me. They had treated me like a placeholder, a backup plan, a girl whose opinions and effort were invisible, yet here was the proof that their little empire would collapse the second I stepped away. I didn't plan to destroy them. Not yet. I only needed to survive, to reclaim control over my own life. I worked the rest of the day in silence, reviewing everything I had created, noting where they had made mistakes, and imagining a future where I didn't have to be invisible anymore. By nightfall, Sam and I had a plan: temporary apartment, careful budgeting, side gigs to cover rent. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy. But it was mine. And for the first time in years, I felt a spark of something I hadn't dared to feel in that house: power. Not over them, but over my own life. Because here's the thing about people who treat you like disposable: they assume you'll always be there. They assume they can take and take and take without ever giving back. They're wrong. And sooner or later, someone like me, someone who actually knows her worth, stops being a safety net. And when that happens, the world starts noticing the cracks. By sunrise the next morning, I was already at my new workspace, a tiny apartment that smelled faintly of bleach and stale coffee, but it was mine and no one was tearing through it telling me I didn't deserve to exist. I pulled out my laptop, the same one that had almost been ruined on that driveway, and logged into every account I had built for the diner. My fingers flew over the keyboard, changing passwords, updating recovery emails, securing analytics, making sure that if they tried to meddle, they wouldn't even know where to begin. I didn't delete anything. I didn't lock them out. I just reclaimed ownership of what was mine, and for the first time, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. Nia, who had insisted I take her bed while she slept on the couch, peeked in from the kitchen, eyes wide. "You're insane," she said, grinning. "Or brilliant. Honestly, I can't tell which." I didn't answer. I had work to do. I went through every post, every flyer, every campaign I had run and made notes, where they had succeeded, where they had stumbled, what I could do to rebuild, not for them, but for me. My life had been wrapped around that diner for so long that the thought of starting over was terrifying, but thrilling. I started small, optimizing delivery schedules, drafting a content calendar, reaching out to suppliers I had once negotiated with personally. Each email sent, each post scheduled felt like a reclamation of my agency. For the first time, I was the boss of my own decisions. I wasn't doing it for anyone else. The diner, my family, my brother, none of them had a say in this life. And the best part? I knew the neighborhood, I knew the audience, and I knew exactly how fragile their little world was without me holding it together. That evening, while Sam cooked a measly pasta dinner, I pulled up the website of a rival cafe downtown. Coastal Grind. They were the perfect combination of sleek design, Instagram-ready aesthetics, and serious customer engagement, but their marketing felt unpolished. They had money, location, potential, but they weren't using it efficiently. My mind raced. If I could get in there, truly in, I could take the skills I had honed for years, the strategies no one appreciated, and apply them in a place that would actually pay me and value me. It wasn't revenge yet. Not the dramatic kind. This was strategy. I spent the night crafting a case study, documenting the growth I had engineered for my family's diner, complete with metrics, screenshots, and examples of campaigns I had designed single-handedly. I didn't mention my eviction. I didn't mention my mother's cruelty or my brother's complacency. I only laid out facts, numbers, and strategy. When Coastal Grind responded the next morning, inviting me for a meeting, my chest tightened. It wasn't validation I needed. It was proof that my life could exist outside the shadow of people who didn't see me. I showed up at Coastal Grind like a professional, calm and confident, detailing the campaigns I could run, how I would improve engagement, how I would bring more foot traffic and revenue. They asked questions about handling negative reviews, influencer missteps, and last-minute changes, and I answered as if I had been doing this my whole life, because I had. They offered me a part-time marketing coordinator position with the potential for full-time, and for the first time in years, I felt the thrill of building something that was truly mine. I started immediately. Social media posts, flyers, email campaigns, loyalty programs, events, I did it all, and people noticed. Customers who had once gone to my mother's diner started leaving comments. "Wait, are you Harper from Harbor Sunrise Diner? Wow, this is amazing." Regulars trickled into Coastal Grind, curious at first, then loyal, spreading the word about a cafe that remembered their names, their orders, and even their favorite tables. Meanwhile, my mother and brother were already floundering. Without me, the diner's social media was a ghost town. Orders came in late, deliveries got messed up, and the online voice I had cultivated for years was replaced by an inept, tone-deaf presence. Madison, with all her Instagram enthusiasm, tried to post videos and updates, but her posts read like performative work with no understanding of real customer engagement. I didn't have to interfere. I didn't have to gloat. I just let the natural consequences of their choices play out while I built something bigger, better, and truly mine. Every evening, I returned to my small apartment, exhausted but satisfied, watching the metrics climb for Coastal Grind while the neighborhood whispered about slow service, cold food, and rude replies from the diner. Every notification was a quiet reminder I mattered. They hadn't appreciated me before, but now the world was, in its own way, proving what I already knew. I felt a simmering satisfaction, not in their downfall, but in the truth that the person they had discarded had survived, thrived, and was no longer their problem. I didn't have to plan revenge yet. I didn't have to confront them. I simply existed in the world they had refused to care about, building a life that demanded respect and acknowledgement. By the second week at Coastal Grind, I was fully immersed, the apartment now feeling like home, cluttered with notebooks, sticky notes, and half-drunk cups of coffee, all proof of progress. Each day, I fine-tuned campaigns, analyzed customer engagement, and collaborated with Blake on event ideas that combined what I knew about the neighborhood with fresh, innovative concepts. We launched a small loyalty program tied to weekend brunch specials, offering points redeemable for coffee, pastries, and discounts on future visits. I watched the numbers climb as regulars recognized the personal touches I had brought from my former life, remembering names, favorite drinks, dietary restrictions, and even conversations we had shared weeks before. It was surreal to see my own work flourishing without the constant stress of fixing someone else's mistakes, without the fear of being kicked out in the middle of the night. Meanwhile, the first cracks in my family's carefully curated life began to show. The diner's Instagram, once a hub of engagement, now posted irregularly, full of typos, mismanaged promotions, and poorly framed photos. Madison tried to fill my shoes, but her posts were performative and disjointed. Followers left comments quietly criticizing service, while delivery orders became increasingly unreliable. Tyler, still unemployed, was stressed and irritable, snapping at anyone who asked for accountability. My mom's panic was palpable, though she still masked it with forced optimism. Every day, she called Nia, asking indirect questions about me, always leading back to the online presence I had once managed. Nia politely but firmly reminded her that I wasn't coming back, and each refusal seemed to fray their patience. I stayed focused, but I couldn't ignore the sense of quiet satisfaction that coursed through me when I heard neighbors whisper about cold food, long waits, and rude responses from the diner. I had not meddled. I had not sabotaged them. I had merely stepped away, and the consequences of their decisions were unfolding naturally. Coastal Grind began drawing in people from the diner's neighborhood. Regulars who had once tipped me extra for remembering their orders now walked into our polished interior, the aroma of fresh coffee filling the space instead of greasy fryers. The community was noticing the difference between a cafe that treated customers as names on a screen and one that treated them like people. My events began selling out. The Sunrise Sunday Brunch series became a hit, our small cold brew flights posted online by real customers who tagged us willingly, not because someone with a ring light told them to. Each post, each share, each new follower reminded me that I had value beyond the walls of my family home, beyond the expectations and dismissals of my mother and brother. They had assumed I was disposable, and I was proving otherwise without a word. My evenings blurred into late nights as I optimized ads, planned collaborations with local roasters, and tested new menu items with photo-ready presentations. I even started mentoring 2 younger baristas interested in marketing, teaching them the tools I had honed since my teens, ensuring the cafe could grow without being dependent solely on me. Meanwhile, the neighborhood buzz about the diner worsened. Mrs. Garcia mentioned to Nia in passing that she had stopped by the diner and found long waits, incorrect orders, and an unhelpful staff member trying to respond to complaints with scripted lines. Neighbors whispered about Madison's constant filming, her ring lights blocking the small dining area, her exaggerated social media tone turning loyal patrons away. My mother's once proud diner reputation began to erode under the weight of decisions she made without consulting the person who had kept it alive for years. The first big misstep came when Madison insisted on an extravagant studio makeover in the garage, complete with a sauna, yoga space, and filming area. The contractor's quote alone drained the emergency funds I had helped build, forcing my mom to take out high-interest personal loans. Tyler, eager to assert himself, backed every expense, convinced it would somehow pay off. But the reality was immediate and cruel. Workmen, frustrated by Madison's constant demands and loud filming, complained to management. Orders for equipment were delayed or mismanaged. The garage renovation became a half-finished, expensive, useless mess. While they scrambled, Coastal Grind continued thriving. The app we had launched rewarded loyal customers, our marketing reached new audiences, and each event brought in more revenue and exposure. I watched the growth with quiet pride, knowing the exact contrast between a space treated with care and one treated like a stage for Instagram content. My family's attempts to reach me intensified. My mom called Nia multiple times, asking for login credentials, updates, and help. Tyler tried texting me directly, pleading for guidance. Madison messaged as well, her words full of faux concern, but really asking for the very work I had refused to give. I ignored them all. The satisfaction wasn't in revenge itself, but in witnessing the natural consequences of their choices. One evening, Nia returned from her shift at Coastal Grind, eyes wide and voice urgent. "Harper, you need to hear this," she said. Madison had tried to expand the garage project further, ordering more equipment and furniture without checking with my mom, driving them deeper into debt. The neighborhood noticed constant shouting, half-finished renovations, and unpaid bills. Tyler had been forced to take temp jobs just to keep up. My mom, once a reliable business owner, was now scrambling and panicking. I listened quietly, making notes, not out of cruelty but from clarity. For years, I had been the invisible glue holding this family together, the one who cleaned up after bad decisions, ensured the diner ran smoothly, and absorbed the consequences of every poor choice. Now I was gone, and the cracks they had ignored for years were widening exponentially. The key lesson became obvious. I didn't need to push them down. I only needed to step aside, let them live the consequences of decisions made without foresight or respect, and continue building a life of my own. This slow, simmering collapse of their carefully constructed world was my revenge, not explosive, not dramatic, but undeniable. And as Coastal Grind flourished under my guidance, I realized that success itself could be a form of quiet justice, a way to show them, without words, what happens when the person you discard decides to choose themselves first. By the third week, Coastal Grind had become more than a job. It was my sanctuary, my proving ground, the place where all the hours, all the unpaid labor, all the stress of keeping someone else's business afloat finally paid off for me instead of for them. Every post, every promotion, every small detail mattered. I tracked engagement, optimized timing, and adjusted ad spend with precision. Our Sunrise Sunday events had become a staple, and the buzz was growing beyond the neighborhood. Customers came in who had never stepped foot in the diner, telling me they had heard about our loyalty program, our curated playlists, and the personal attention we gave every order. I watched the revenue climb with a sense of satisfaction I hadn't realized I was capable of feeling. Meanwhile, the chaos on the other side of town worsened exponentially. My mom, Tyler, and Madison were burning through what little cash reserves remained. The garage renovation had stalled indefinitely, contractors refused to return calls without payment, and some had begun leaving incomplete deliveries of furniture and spa equipment. Madison, frustrated, took to filming herself arguing on Instagram Live, trying to garner sympathy and maintain the illusion of a brand. Followers rolled their eyes, engagement tanked, and what little audience they had started disappearing. Tyler, desperate to salvage his pride and income, jumped between temp jobs and unpaid gigs, exhausted and constantly stressed. My mom's panic was no longer hidden behind polite smiles or forced optimism. Late at night, neighbors could hear her crying over phone calls with creditors and vendors, trying to explain delays she could no longer control. I didn't gloat. I didn't post updates. I simply kept building my world, refining our campaigns, tweaking events, and mentoring my team. And yet, despite the distance, I couldn't ignore the ripple effect of their mistakes. One evening, as I was reviewing analytics for our upcoming promotional series, Nia came in with an envelope she had picked up for me. It was from the landlord of the diner building, official and stark, the final notice. If payment wasn't made by the end of the week, the lease would be terminated. The words were precise, cold, and unyielding. I didn't need to open it fully to know the outcome. They had ignored the warning signs for too long. The diner's reputation had collapsed under poor service, delayed orders, and Madison's amateur social media strategies. The once loyal customers had already begun trickling toward Coastal Grind, often recognizing me as the person behind the transformation, the one who had once known every regular's favorite order. The irony was deliciously sharp. Nia and I watched as the numbers came in. Weekend sales at Coastal Grind spiked, App downloads increased, and engagement on our social media doubled. And still, I did nothing but continue to do my job. My family had assumed I would return when things got hard, that I would bail them out as I had so many times before. But I had long since learned that enabling poor choices only perpetuates failure. The following morning, I noticed a familiar delivery driver stopping by Coastal Grind. He had been let go from the diner when Madison insisted she could handle logistics herself. He grinned when he saw me and said, "You've done it again. People are leaving the diner and coming here instead." I didn't need him to explain. I already knew point 46372. Their infrastructure had collapsed without the person holding it together. They had ignored the work, the hours, the sweat, and the care I had poured into their business for years. And now, in my absence, the consequences were tangible. I began thinking strategically, not maliciously, but with precision. Coastal Grind's growth wasn't about revenge in the traditional sense, it was about opportunity. I saw the corner where my family's diner sat and realized the potential for a new location. Foot traffic, demographics, visibility, it all lined up perfectly. Blake asked for my input on expansion, and I didn't hesitate. I drew up a detailed report, citing customer behavior, local trends, and projections, deliberately omitting the connection to my family. Within days, negotiations for the property began. Meanwhile, the tension at the diner was palpable. Late-night arguments between my mom, Tyler, and Madison became routine. Madison ranted about failed aesthetics, poor audience engagement, and how she was the one bringing modernization to the family business, while my mom tried desperately to manage finances she barely understood, and Tyler flailed trying to keep everyone calm. Their world, once stable in a fragile, dependent way, was fracturing. I watched from across town as they dug themselves deeper, knowing I had done nothing except refuse to be complicit. Then came the first real test of restraint. My mom, realizing the diner's social media had collapsed, tried to contact me through Nia. She begged for guidance, login information, anything to salvage what they had destroyed. Tyler sent messages directly, pleading and frustrated. Madison tried the same, weaving stories of stress and mismanagement, attempting to guilt me into returning. I read each one and felt the familiar pang of loyalty that had driven me to sacrifice for years. And then I remembered the driveway, the trash bag, and the words that had cut me deeper than any insult. "You don't deserve to be here." I deleted the messages without response. The satisfaction wasn't revenge, it was clarity. The consequences of their choices belonged to them, not me. I focused on Coastal Grind's expansion, the potential lease for my family's former space, and the continued growth of our app and loyalty programs. Each sale, each engagement, each satisfied customer became a quiet assertion of the value I brought to the world. By the end of the month, the lease negotiations were finalized. Coastal Grind would take over the corner where my family had once assumed my labor was theirs to command. They would inherit the building, the foot traffic, and the opportunity one had been denied. I had not sabotaged them. I had simply stepped aside and built something better, something that recognized my worth. I knew the final confrontation was inevitable. My mom and siblings would discover the lease, the renovation plans, the thriving cafe that now occupied the space where I had once been discarded. I anticipated their arrival outside my apartment, the pleadings, the shock. But I also knew I wouldn't flinch. I had chosen myself, and the timing was deliberate. Coastal Grind had given me the tools, the platform, and the recognition I had always deserved. The contrast between their crumbling world and my flourishing life would speak louder than any words I could ever say. And so I waited, not out of spite, but because some lessons are only learned when you witness them firsthand. The fall they had ignored for years was coming, and I would simply stand back and let gravity do its work. 2 weeks after the lease was signed, I was closing up at Coastal Grind, reviewing the final plans for the grand opening of the new location. Nia had gone home early, leaving me alone with the soft hum of espresso machines and the faint smell of fresh bread. That's when I saw the headlights outside my apartment. Not unfamiliar cars, not deliveries, but my family, hunched under coats and scarves, suitcases in tow, faces pale, eyes swollen from sleepless nights. My heart didn't skip. It didn't ache. It wasn't fear. It was a quiet, almost clinical anticipation. They had assumed I would bail them out again. They had assumed I would fix everything because that's what I had done my whole life. I didn't open the door. I slid the chain lock into place, just enough to see them. My mom's voice cracked as she said, "Harper, please, we need your help. We made mistakes. We're losing everything." Tyler stepped forward, pleading, "We're family. You can't let us fail like this. You're the only one who knows how to fix it." Madison hovered behind, mascara running, her phone dangling from her hand, lips trembling as if she might cry or yell. It was hard to tell. I stood there, calm, collected. I let them see the person they had dismissed, the one they had thrown into a trash bag and assumed would disappear quietly. And then I spoke. "You're right about one thing," I said. "I am very good at fixing things. That's why Coastal Grind hired me. That's why, starting next month, there's going to be a brand new cafe in the exact spot where you threw my future into the trash." My mom blinked, confusion and disbelief painting her face. "What are you talking about?" Tyler's mouth opened, but no words came. "The landlord needed a tenant," I continued. "Someone reliable, someone growing." Blake asked my opinion. I told him your location was perfect. We signed the lease. We are gutting the inside and turning it into something better. Madison's face twisted in horror and fury. "You stole our business. You ruined us." I shook my head. "No, you did that yourselves. You spent more on ring lights than on payroll. You fired good people. You insulted customers. All I did was stop holding your world together for free." My mom sagged against the doorframe, finally looking older than her 50 years. "I never wanted this," she whispered. "I just wanted you kids to have more than I did." "Then you should have started by not throwing away the person who already knew how to build something," I said quietly, letting the words sink in. The faint blue and red flashes of the police lights from the hallway painted the scene surreal. I had called the non-emergency line, explained that there was a disturbance outside, that I didn't know the people, and that I didn't feel safe. Within minutes, the officer arrived, professional, calm. He asked them to leave and reminded them they could not loiter or cause a disturbance. There were no handcuffs, no arrests, just a quiet, humiliating walk down the hallway with their bags in hand. I watched silently, letting them feel the consequences of every choice they had made, every careless decision, every moment they had assumed I would clean up the mess for them. My mom reached toward the doorframe where my hand had been. "I'm still your mother," she said, voice breaking. I met her gaze, steady, unwavering. "You told me I didn't deserve to be here. Now you know what it feels like on the other side of that door." And then I closed it. I slid the chain back, leaned against the wood, and let the weight of years of sacrifice and unappreciated work settle. Relief washed over me, not from their suffering, but from finally stepping into my own power. The grand opening of the new Coastal Grind location felt like a dream I hadn't known I could have. I stood at the entrance, tablet in hand, watching customers file in. Faces from my past blinked as they realized the space my family had once occupied now pulsed with life, professionalism, and respect. The smell of fresh pastries, the polished wood, the soft music, it all felt intentional, like every choice I had made led here. Blake thanked me publicly, highlighting the marketing strategy, the app launch, the loyalty program. I felt proud, unashamed, fully seen. My family did not attend. I didn't send them pictures. I didn't rub it in. I simply existed in the life I had built, where my value was recognized, my work rewarded, and my effort mattered. In the weeks that followed, news of the cafe's success reached the old neighborhood. Former diner regulars came to Coastal Grind, curious, then loyal. I mentored my team, guided younger baristas interested in marketing, and poured my energy into community projects tied to the cafe. Meanwhile, my mom took a job as a line cook in a chain restaurant, Tyler worked as a delivery driver, and Madison faded from social media, trying to rebrand herself without traction. They learned, slowly, painfully, what it meant to lose the safety net they had taken for granted. I did not celebrate their failure. I celebrated my life, my independence, and my choice to step away from a system that undervalued me. The real revenge was never the lease or the eviction notice. It was the quiet, undeniable power of building a life where I mattered, where my effort was recognized, and where I was free from manipulation. Family is not just a name on a birth certificate. It is the people who show up when you are at your lowest, who support you without expecting repayment, who see your worth even when others dismiss it. I had found my family in Nia, in Blake, in my team, and in the customers who trusted me. And in that, I found freedom. If you've ever been thrown aside, told you're a burden, or had your value ignored, remember this: you can choose yourself. You can build something that belongs to you, that recognizes your worth, that thrives because of your effort and vision. And when you do, sometimes the quietest, most powerful revenge is simply living your best life, unapologetically and fully. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt overlooked or undervalued, share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so more stories of resilience and self-discovery reach the people who need them most.